A very warm good afternoon to all of you. I am Sakshi, welcoming you all on behalf of Net Zero Alliance and First View Group to Net Zero Energy Roadmap FMCG. I take the pleasure of thanking our panel members for extending their immense support to organize this event, and a very special mention to our presenting partners, Tata Power and Sunshore, and our platinum partner, Fourth Partner Energy, for being our crusaders here. I would now request my team to play the commercial video for Tata Power. Thank you so much, team, for playing that video. May I introduce Mr. Vikrant Musle from Tata Power to give the presentation for this company. Over to you, Mr. Vikrant.
Thank you so much, Sakshi. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be just sharing the screen. Do let me know once it is visible to you. A confirmation from anyone would be, will be handy.
It's visible if you could just, yes, the slide show.
Is it visible, Sakshi?
Yes, it's visible now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Uh, Although the group doesn't require a separate introduction to the Indian context, but just to glance through the profile that we have. Of course, the group was incorporated by Mr. Jamshedji Tata back in 1868. Amongst the multiple verticals that we have, such as material engineering, IT. So energy and infrastructure is the vertical where our company is being extracted, right? So we have started the organization in 1990 We are one of the we are one of the few organizations who has seen the 100 years of a journey together. So under the vertical there is a company known as Tata Power Renewable Energy, which has been operational since past 30 years. And we as an organization aim to be carbon neutral by 2045. Talking about the food presence of the organization, so amongst the multiple verticals that we have under the renewable energy domain, RE is something where we would like to enhance our solutioning part of it. uh, Talking about our own installation, so we own the asset of around 3 gigawatt, which includes 2.6 gigawatt worth solar installation and around 1 gigawatt worth wind installation. Apart from this, we also have our own solar PV module manufacturing facility there in Bangalore. And you might have also heard during the multiple news articles that we are also expanding this facility to 4 gigawatt. This facility of our own model manufacturing is likely to be operational end of this financial year. Apart from that, so we also understand, apart from this, we also have multiple distribution network. So in Maharashtra, likewise, we have in MSc DCL. So similarly in Odisha, we manage the entire distribution of Odisha. We also have some pockets there in Delhi and Ajmer region, right? uh, Catering to the so we also understand, as an individual, as an organization, every C&I customer has its separate requirement, right? In order to cater their solution, we have started up with rooftop solution. We are also providing group captive solutions, EV charging stations to our client. Talking specifically about on-site solution, right? So this is a map of a country which gives a no footprint of us. So if we talk specifically about our C&I customers, which is within premises, right? So we have totally around 1.8 gigawatt worth solar installation done for a C&I customer within their premises. Some of our marquee customers are one of the education institute, which is there in Punjab, right? For it's a single world's largest single rooftop projects, which install the capacity of around 16 megawatt. And of course, Brabourne Cricket Stadium, right? One of the marquee stadium. Also in the map, you are seeing some of these images. So these are the park, solar park, where we are trying to cater the group captive open access solution as a requirement. And trust us, we are going very aggressive when it's come to the offering group captive open access as a solution. Talking about the customer, yes, right from FMCG sector to chemical, from auto ancillaries to education institute, we have provided solution for almost all the customer category when it's come to the on-site. The solution that we offers, we typically bifurcate into two aspects, right? On-site and off-site. So anything which is within premises, whether it is metal sheet, RCC roof, or carport, or anything ground mounted within the premises, right? We classified it as an on-site, right? And there is a lot of government supporting policies that are there, which promotes this type of an activity. So anything which is off-site, right? At no neutral location from the generation source, right? The open access solution is something that we also keen to focus more. For the time being, I'll just skip this slide. So the offering that I was explaining pertaining to the on-site solution. So on-site typically has multiple components, right? Two major components: solar PV modules and inverters. Combined together forms a solar PV system, which typically generate powers and consume within the premises. If I take this thing as an example, let's say I have taken an illustration perspective, right? Let's say an industrial consumer who want to set up a 500 kilowatt peak system within the premises. It will cost him somewhere around 2.2 crore rupees. From this system, these are just illustration number, right? So to install the 500 kilowatt peak system, we require somewhere around 50,000 to 60,000 square feet area, depending upon its orientation and tilt, right? Now this 500 kilowatt peak system will monthly generate somewhere around 62,000 units, right? Now if you understand typically a tariff, let's say 8 rupees is the discount tariff which the consumer is paying, right? And if the consumer was earlier consuming 1 lakh units, he would have been paying 8 lakh rupees as a electricity bill charges to the discount. The moment he set up anything within the premises, he will be offsetting, compensating equivalent units from the solar PV system. So this very same consumer, the payback period can be as low as 3.66 years. And trust me, this is without considering the accelerated depreciation factor. Similarly, so this is a capex solution, right? A similar solution can be offered in terms of an opex, where Tata Power will step in and he will invest 100% of the project value, set up the plant within the company's premises, and we will have a bilateral power purchase agreement with an end consumer, right? The upfront investment will be done by Tata Power, and we will be signing a per unit tariff with an consumer, right? Now, continuing that very same example, now in this case, the end consumer will have to now pay 8 rupees. So instead of 8 rupees for this 37,000 units, he will have to pay the PPA tariff, right? For a simplicity of understanding, let's say he decides to sign a power purchase agreement at 6 rupees, 6 rupees 40 paise, right? Then his bill will reduce from 8 lakh rupees to 3 lakh rupees to the discom, and balance 4 lakh rupees to an investor. So the net saving would be around 1 lakh rupees, right? So again, this is a solution. Whether capex fund is also available or not available, both can be mitigated solution. The third solution which Tata Power bring to the table is, of course, group captive open access solution, right? So under open access mechanism, there are two ways through which you can source the power. One, by either setting up plant 100% by investment, or by sub consuming power only under third party open access. But if you understand the definition of captive open access, right? So there is a provision which allows an end consumer to have a equity contribution somewhere around 7.5% to 6% of the project value, right? They can source power under open access. They can avail all the benefits which are associated with the capex, and they can mitigate the risk in terms of the application of AS and CSS at this point of time. These are one of our solar park that we have executed in Solapur in back 2022, 120 megawatt plant. These are some of the images that we have executed. Again talking about on-site solutions, group Hindustan Cola is one of our marquee customer. For them, we have executed around 1.2 megawatt system at their 4 locations. Godrej, we have also executed 1.2 megawatt system for their plant in Madhya Pradesh. These are some of the installation that we have executed. That's it. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sakshi.
So much for that presentation. That was quite insightful. I would now request my team to play the video for Sunshore, commercial video for Sunshore Energy. Allows me.
Why should you go solar? Did you know that India is now producing the world's cheapest solar power, the cleanest source of energy in the world? So what makes solar so attractive? Of course, you make massive savings on electricity bills, but there are also great tax benefits on solar investments. Let's simplify this for you. The price of solar energy remains fixed while the grid costs go on increasing. So your savings go on increasing year on year. Over its lifetime, a well-engineered plant saves over 7 times its investment. It's environmentally friendly. A 500 kilowatt solar plant helps offset CO2 worth more than 4,000 trees every year. Sunshore Energy is the complete solutions partner on your solar power journey. We help you from conceptualizing your solar investment to commissioning of the assets and its operations over its complete lifetime, all from under one roof. We are a team of IIT alumnus driven to propel India into a solar-powered, energy-sufficient future. We are right now the largest rooftop solar company in India, aiming to create a portfolio of 1,000 megawatts of solar power assets by 2022, with running projects in over 15 states. Corporations can transition to solar power through rooftop solar, while larger power needs can be fulfilled from open access solar plants. These plants are set up far from the premises, and the power is delivered directly to the facility. With the combination of rooftop solar and open access, large corporations can shift up to 90% of their energy to solar and bring down power costs by 40%. We will assist you in navigating the complete financial landscape of the project and also guarantee best-in-class energy generation from solar plants we create for you. Our expertise in site surveys, assessment and compliance to the highest international standards for our designs ensures complete satisfaction. A dedicated project manager ensures that the project is planned and executed with world-class quality and safety standards. Timely delivery of the project is monitored closely with the aid of daily progress reports till the project is handed over to you. Post-commissioning, the asset management team provides performance assurance to your plant. This is achieved with our timely maintenance schedules and advanced analytics practice on real-time data from the plant. You will receive business-grade reports on a daily basis, and all major system events will be brought to your notice. Sit back, relax, and watch the sunshine turn into gold for your business.
Thank you, team, for playing that video. May I now introduce Mr. Kartikeya Sharma, who's the co-founder of Sunshine Energy, for giving the presentation for his company.
Thank you, Sakshi. I hope I am audible and you all can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for taking out time and going through the video. In my presentation, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Sunshore because we've already seen the video, and just try to set a little context about for the entire attendees here in terms of what net zero would mean for the FMCG industry in India and what are the various contours that we can talk about. So just starting with a quick introduction on Sunshore, we are a completely corporate focused CNI renewables company, and we have over 400 megawatts of installed and operational capacity across India, and have a complete full stack offering within the Sunshore platform, which means that we do everything from project development to execution and management of the assets throughout its lifetime. Our investors, Partners Group, have invested $400 million in Sunshore, and this has to be leveraged further. And we plan to invest close to $1.2 billion over the next 3 to 4 years and set up 3 gigawatts of renewable energy assets. Most of these will be focused on CNI, which is commercial and industrial customers in the country, but some of these would also be utility plants. We offer a complete gamut of services so that corporations can go fully RE100, which includes everything from plain vanilla rooftop solar, open access solar, or wind, or hybrid power plants that can give you round the clock renewable energy. We also offer green attributes and virtual PPAs for customers who are not able to directly use power from our plants. Our customers include industries from across sectors, but some very large names from the FMCG market include Dabur and SLMG Beverages. SLMG Beverages is one of the largest bottlers for Coca-Cola India. Our RE projects are present across the country, so we have both interstate as well as intrastate power plants, so that we can serve customers of all sizes across the country. When it comes to the FMCG industry, we see that there is a 3-point approach that the FMCG industry should take in order to use net zero, in order to get to net zero. First and foremost, is which is 50% of the net zero game as we assess, is energy use. So, first of all, you have to make sure that all the energy that you're using from the grid is coming from clean sources. If it is possible, you must install on-site solar power plants so that you reduce the need for external power to begin with. And then whatever you use externally, try to get it from open access or any other way of procuring green power. Work for your efficiency. Make sure that your heating, cooling, lighting loads are being efficiently managed, and try to use monitoring, digital monitoring for identifying energy use and areas of improvement. This is 50% of the game as per our assessment. The other 50% is basically, one is, will come through circular economy practices such as using recyclable packaging material or reducing waste during and after manufacturing cycle of the product. And lastly is, we all understand that FMCG has some of the most complex supply chains, both from the raw material side to also the distribution across the country. So as much as possible, the supply chain must be decarbonized through use of electric vehicles, even asking your suppliers or your vendors to use as much renewable energy as possible, and make them more and more aware of circular economy practices. And in this way, we believe that if the FMCG industry can reach their net zero goals. Out of these, the lowest hanging fruit is energy use, and that is what, at Sunshore also we help our customers, first of all, on the energy use front, which includes signing power through open access PPAs, which can help you, offset anywhere from 40 to 60% of your energy. um, you can complement this with on-site power, which also helps around 10-15% of offset, and the remaining 20-25% offsets can be done through buying green attributes, especially to offset your peak time emissions. So as you know, under open access, you're not able to get power during peak times most of the time. But of course, if you're using wind, then even that becomes possible. So while you're taking this decision as an industry, while you're looking to understand how you can actually go for open access, which is the biggest part in your energy transition, there are two things which are very important. While this slide might look a little technical, but I just want you to focus on two things. One is that look at your own profile, look at what is your addressable power in each of the months. So FMCG industries typically are seasonal, so they will have seasonal loads. So for example, this particular factory we're looking at has low load between July to October, but very high load between October to March. So you have to see whether this profile aligns with the profile of your renewable energy solution, and if yes, then see what is the kind of dependence you have on banking, and then just do a simple optimization exercise where you're able to see what is the open access capacity at which you're making maximum savings and are also offsetting maximum. So in this example on the right, this particular industry, when it reaches around 55% displacement, it saves around 1.2 crore rupees a year. But right after that, once they try to offset more, they see a reducing trend in savings, which is because of certain banking restrictions in this particular state. So you have to understand your own consumption pattern, the production pattern of your renewable energy solution, and then figure out what is the most optimum capacity you can offtake, so that you make maximum savings and offset as well. Um, Apart from this, I feel that a lot of customers are already aware that open access power gives you the opportunity to fix your power tariffs for 15 to 25 years. You make almost 35% saving as against the grid. In states like Maharashtra, it's even more. If you do it in captive mode, there is no cross subsidy or no additional surcharge. You can offset a large part, sometimes up to 70-75% of your grid power, depending on which state you are in. The best part of doing it with a developer like Sunshore is that you have no risk to project development, technology, or operations. We take care of all of this. We wrap it very securely in the power purchase agreement and the shareholders agreement, and eventually you're able to drastically reduce your scope 1 and 2 emissions by offsetting a large part of your power use. Um, Typically, when you're going for open access, make sure that you understand that what is the development status of the project. This is the longest period of the project, typically takes 6 to 9 months. But if this is done, then your PPA signing say you can get power in around 4 to 6 months easily. But this is typically where the project development, where land acquisition and permits are involved. This is where what makes delivery slower. Of course, for FMCG companies, if you're making this kind of savings, this is an example from Maharashtra, where you can, get landed power at around 6 rupees per unit as opposed to 935 from the grid. Uh, you must focus on how quickly you're able to get this power, because every month that you delay, if you're a 5 megawatt customer, then you're leaving, crores of rupees on the table. every month. So be vigilant and be fast and be very focused on when you need power. Even in states like UP, which is another very popular FMCG destination, the savings are quite a lot. Power can land to you at around 4 rupees 50 paisa to 4 rupees 80 paisa, and grid charges are north of 7 rupees per unit. So you make a good 2.5 rupees savings per unit. Captive structuring is you have to own 26% of the project, and the SPV basically supplies you power and makes you pay for the invoices they cut. FMCG is a fantastic sector, and we've seen some of the largest companies in the country sign very very large PPAs for open access, behind the meter, and other such procurement models. And we see a lot of companies in FMCG have already moved to open access or are already in discussion. This is just some of the names that are very publicly available. And you can of course get in touch with me, or write an email to Sunshore Marketing at Sunshore, and we'll get back to you, and we'll be very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Over to you, Sakshi. Thank you for
Thank
this.
you so much for that insightful presentation. I will now request my team to play the commercial video for Fourth Partner Energy.
Fourth Partner Energy, India's leading renewable energy solutions company, committed to accelerating decarbonization across commercial and industrial businesses.
Fourth Partner Energy was set up to help corporate in their sustainability journey in adopting renewable energy. In the last 12 years, the deep capabilities we have built have allowed leading commercial and industrial clients to move towards their corporate objective of ensuring 100% renewable energy. We at Fourth Partner Energy are their partner of choice, and we are making this migration for them in a commercially viable yet just manner, serving corporates across India, South and Southeast Asia.
Backed by global impact investors, Norfund and TPG's Rise Fund, our network of lenders include British International Investment, Bank of America, SBI, Responsibility, Symbiotics, amongst others. With nearly 1.3 gigawatt of installed renewables capacity, over 2,000 projects and 200 marquee clients, Fourth Partner Energy is now operational in Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. We offer energy as a service to help offset nearly 100% of the client's electricity demand through clean sources. Round-the-clock renewables, on-site and off-site solar, wind-solar hybrid, battery storage, energy trading, and electric mobility infrastructure. Our low-cost, low-carbon solutions help transform your business. Commit to a greener tomorrow by joining hands with Fourth Partner Energy today.
Thank you, team, for playing that. May I now introduce on stage Mr. Jay Kumar Bagila to give the presentation for his company.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you, First View Group, for inviting Fourth Partner to be part of this net zero transition for FMCG industry. Good afternoon to the fellow panelists and the participants. In this presentation, I would like to just be brief. I think most of the renewable energy possible solutions have been covered by my fellow panelists. So I would like to touch base on the additionality concept which Fourth Partner can bring in. So as we are all aware that as an humanity together, or as a society together, we are trying to fight the monster called as climate change, right? This is a man-made issue which we all have to now fight and overcome this challenge. So on the left, if you see, this is a a graphical representation. I'll just make it easy for you all. Uh, the whole objective is to ensure that the global warming does not go beyond 1.5 degrees increase in the temperature. Currently, we are at 1.2 degrees as of 2022, which is already alarming. So we don't have too much time left before we hit this ceiling. So, with all the policies, all the action plans which the countries and the various organizations have opted for, at best, we will be able to restrict ourselves to 1.5 by 2030. And that is also if we are able to make very rapid progress on the commitments we have made on adoption of renewable energy. On the right side of the slide, if you see, the commercial and industrial industries are the key to achieve these goals. The government is doing its bit. The consumption, like the consumers, like individuals, will try their own bit, but it is the CNI industry which can make or break. So nearly 50% of the consumption in India today comes from the CNI industry. Also, the CNI industries, or in fact, only industries, I would say, is responsible for 30% of the global CO2 emissions. Hence, it's mandatory for the CNI team members to come to party and adopt renewable energy. Now I come specifically to FMCG industry. If you look at FMCG industry, where even the agriculture is a kind of a supplier to the FMCG industry in most of its product. So roughly 30% of the greenhouse gases is being contributed by the food industry and FMCG. If you look at leading FMCG companies like Unilever, Coke, Pepsi, all of them have taken a lot of positive actions to bring their share of renewable energy to the high 50s and 60s. But the real impact FMCGs would be able to make a dent here would only be if their supply chain also starts reducing their carbon impact. So 80% of the GHG emissions of FMCG is in their supply chain. The way they source the material, the way it gets transported to their factories, and the packaging, again sending it back to the consumption areas, and again the bringing back the wastage. For example, certain packaging which is not getting decomposed, it is also being collected back by the FMCGs for recycling purpose. So if you include everything, it is actually the supply chain, which is inward and outward both, is where the real game plan for FMCGs would be. Therefore, as an industry, they are facing, or the FMCG industry is actually facing a disruption in the terms of ESG compliance. Today, we feel the industries which will go forward or which will last longer would be one who is going to add the fifth P to the already four Ps which they have been practicing. The fifth P is nothing but the purpose. So the companies with purpose will last, the brands with purpose will grow, and the people with purpose will thrive, is what we feel. And therefore it is kind of a necessity now for the FMCG industry to kind of adopt a very high standards of ESG compliance and adoption of renewable energy. It's not only for, specifically this session is for FMCG, and so I'm focusing more on that. But this slide, if you really look, it talks about the 4 Cs, or the 4 C benefits of decarbonization. You can get lower cost of capital. Today, there are funds who give cheaper loans. You can save energy cost, operational cost goes down. Your end customers have become much more aware of buying products which are now made from sustainable methods. So there will be a concept very soon where people will demand green groceries. Just like we are seeing green steel, green cement, FMCG industry will also be finding very soon how green is my product will be the differentiator. And obviously, the companies who are adopting ESG practices are showing very high levels of corporate citizenship. This is a quick understanding about how can you actually migrate to a net zero roadmap. So by installing, say, solar on site, that is within your premise, you can offset about 15 to 20% of your consumption. We can go to open access, which is a plant which is away from your manufacturing facility. There, the space is not the constraint, and therefore you can offset nearly 60%. Energy storage will play a big role. As you all know, the renewable energy is a variable resource, and hence marrying it with energy storage will help you to further offset nearly 15% of your consumption in addition to the on-site and off-site options. And obviously the last bit will be the virtual power plants or buying the green attributes, which can offset about 5% of your consumption. I wouldn't like to spend a lot of time on the numbers which we have already seen our uh, the corporate video, but I will just highlight you certain key points on the slides which I feel will be impactful. So fourth partner energy works with nearly 200 corporate clients. FMCG is a big sector here. So if you take the top 10 companies, nearly 8 to 9 FMCG top 10 companies have worked with fourth partner, and we have got more than 40% repeat orders, so which talks about the kind of commitment we bring into the table. These are the entire gamut of solutions which we bring in, whether it is on site, off site, whether it is solar, wind, or hybrid. We also can bring in energy storage. We can give you all contracts within the state, across the states through ISTS. It can be a round the clock contract. We can also give help with EV charging stations in your premise. So the everything related to sustainability can be found with fourth partner. This is an India map which talks about our large open access plants. So whichever state has got a favorable regulatory policy, fourth partner has gone ahead and started building a large open access plant, whether it is wind or solar, both combined. This slide is typically about what are the various on-site solar solutions possible. So you all can see that we have done implementation on tin sheds, dome shed, floating. We have done on RCC roof. We have also done with ballast mounted and also integrated energy storage there. And we have done large scale ground mounted behind the meter with carports also being part of our solutions. So you name it and we will be able to deliver it on site. This is just 2 or 3 more slides which talks about the key strengths. So fourth partner is a company where you all can tie up for multiple types of solutions across pan India. So whether it is on site or off site, we have been able to deliver about 90 megawatts for Ultratech cement. For Hindustan Unilever, who is the number one FMCG company in the country, more than 50% of their on-site capacity is built by fourth partner. DMart, again a retail giant, we started with just one plant of 100 kilowatt in FY17, and today we have got close to 23 megawatts with them pan India. We have been able to get repeat orders from clients like ITC, who have got a very high safety standards. And there have been only few plants, and that also I'm very proud to say, built by fourth partner, where in a single, a kind of a single survey or single audit, the entire plant was approved by their central safety team. For fourth partner, RE is just not renewable energy, but also responsible energy, and hence HSC is a very important aspect for us. So this is what we had to share. Happy to be, providing solutions to the FMCG industry going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that knowledgeable presentation, Mr. Jay Kumar. Here, I would like to make a small announcement. Attendees can post their questions in the Q&A box, and our speakers will answer those questions at the end of the panel discussion. As we are aware that the fast-moving consumer goods, that is the FMCG industry, plays a significant role in the global energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. As the world strives to combat climate change, the concept of achieving net zero energy has gained traction. Net zero energy refers to the state where an industry's energy consumption is balanced by the energy it generates from renewable sources, resulting in net zero energy consumption from the grid. Today, we aim to outline a roadmap for the FMCG industry in order to achieve net zero energy, and our panelists will outline key steps and considerations for the same. Allow me to introduce the lead panel for today. Ms. Srimoy, who will be the moderator for today, Mr. Surajit Bose from Hindustan Coca-Cola, Ms. Saranya Pradhan from McCain Foods, Mr. Kartikeya Sharma from Sunshore Energy, Mr. Vikrant from Tata Power, and Mr. Jay Kumar from Fourth Party Energy. Over to you, Ms. Srimoy.
Thank you so much, Sakshi. I hope I'm audible. Right. Jay, I really liked one of the slides that you presented before, and Kartikeya, what you spoke about value chain. I think you summarized what decarbonization really means for the FMCG sector. Given the amount of time, I'm not going to get into the details again, but a quick round of introduction from myself. My name is Srimoy. I look after sustainability and CSR at Marico Limited. And I'm here with a very eminent list of panelists who are going to talk to you about both sides of this journey. The FMCG companies who will be talking about what net zero really means to us, what are some of the business enablers, what do we see as coming, and of course we have some of the partners with whom we've been working, who would propose some of the solutions to the pertinent challenges that are raised by industry players like us. There was one particular thing, Jay, that I think you mentioned, which is purpose, the fifth P, right? I'll pick that up from you, and it's something that we hear in companies on the other side. I think Sharanya and Surjit would agree with me. As an FMCG sector, we are looking at the generation alpha, right? They are our go-to market. And if you pick up a sample of the generation alpha on any of the social media platforms, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, there's a new hashtag that has come into the picture, which is being climate forward. So any FMCG company, when they are really looking at, declaring their ESG commitments, they are definitely keeping their consumers in mind. And these consumers have now taken up a driving seat, given digitalization and given the kind of exposure that they have on sustainable lifestyles. So companies like us really need to reimagine the energy footprint of not just our organization, but also of our products. And inflation adjusted, I think the demand for sustainably sourced and ethically produced products is really becoming, in vogue. And I think all companies who are in the FMCG sector are looking at climate resilience as not just a business imperative anymore, but more like an impact multiplier across the entire stakeholder ecosystem. It's really the way by which they can demonstrate stakeholder capitalism. So I think Kartikeya mentioned a lot about value chain, integration of carbon management into the value chain. You're absolutely right. If you pick up the latest World Economic Forum's risk report, right, the global risk report, until about 3 years back, pre-pandemic, you would always find ESG somewhere in the top 10 risks. Pick up the report now, and the first three risks, the top three risks rated by the World Economic Forum, is on environmental and social, climate risks being the first and the foremost one. So the problem is real, and the solutions that have started coming in are also very real. I'll give you a small example of what we are doing here at Marico, and then, of course, I'll introduce my panelists and ask them to pick up the floor from there. At Marico, we started our ESG journey not very long ago in 2018, and climate resilience has always been, I think, the cornerstone of every commitment that we've made here in this organization. We declared our 2.0, which is our 2030 ESG roadmap, last year, which was the 50th anniversary of the World Environment Day. That's the day when we declared our 2.0 2030 roadmap, in which achieving net zero in our global operations was the first goal. So we've taken up a net zero target right now within our operations in India by 2030 and globally across the Marico footprint by 2050. 70% of our total energy requirements are now being met by renewable sources. And of course, we are looking at certified carbon neutral operations. We already have certified carbon neutral operations for parachute manufacturing units in India. And we are looking at all the facilities in India being certified as carbon neutral. We've also started, looking at zero fossil fuel operations. Biobriquettes is something that we are really looking at for our thermal requirements, and we've been looking at several energy efficiency related smart technology upgrades within our facilities to be able to achieve our net zero targets. So. Lots of interesting things that will come up in the course of discussions that we have in this panel. I would not want to take up all the time, but really invite the panelists, request them to introduce themselves, talk about what net zero and this whole decarbonization journey really means for their organization, and we will take up questions like Sakshi mentioned. So as we are speaking, I would request the audience to start posting your questions. We'll take them up towards the end, or maybe cover it while we are speaking in our respective slots. With that, I invite Sharanya. Sharanya is the sustainability head at McCain Foods. Sharanya, why don't you tell us a little bit about what decarbonization means for your business, and what are some of the incremental business opportunities that you've seen over a short and long term period?
Thank you, Srimoy. Hi everyone, my name is Saranya. I head sustainability and corporate communication at McCain Foods, and I've been around the block for about 12 years now. So I'll just pick up from where Srimoy has left off. Um, as we all know, the FMCG industry, due to its high volume and rapid turnover, it has significant environmental impacts across various stages of the product life cycle. Some of these impacts would include number one, resource depletion, very obvious because of the high consumption of raw materials, water, and energy sources during production and manufacturing processes. These basically contribute to the resource depletion and the strain on ecosystems. Second one, waste generation. The FMCG industry generates a substantial amount of packaging waste, which can end up in landfills or as litter, leading to environmental pollution. Third, and the top, which is right now on the top of everybody's minds, greenhouse gas emissions. So the energy intensive production processes and transportation of goods, they result in significant greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to climate change. And finally, deforestation and biodiversity loss. So the demand for raw materials such as palm oil or soy and wood, they can lead to deforestation and habitat destruction. Having touched upon that, some decarbonization models and strategies that have been used in the FMCG business and are continuing to be used to reduce emissions and transition towards more sustainable practices. We would start with, of course, renewable energy procurement. FMCG companies are increasingly sourcing RE, such as solar and wind, or sometimes a hybrid of it, to power their operations and reduce their reliance on fossil fuels. Then comes carbon offsetting. Some FMCG companies are investing in carbon offset projects to compensate for their remaining emissions. Then then we can talk about supply chain decarbonization. FMCG businesses are working with their suppliers to basically implement sustainable practices throughout the supply chain. This includes encouraging the suppliers to adopt renewable energy, reduce their emissions, and also improve efficiency in their operations. Then comes circular economy. Adopting CE principles basically involves designing products for longevity, repairability, recyclability, and reducing waste. Of course, and all the GHG emissions that is associated with the disposal of their products. Uh, Attached to that, sustainable packaging solutions, which the FMCG companies are exploring, uh, such as biodegradable materials, eco-friendly designs, then comes reduced packaging waste, etc. Then we can talk about energy efficiency and conservation, of course. So implementing those energy efficient technologies and processes across manufacturing facilities, distribution centers, and stores can significantly reduce energy consumption and the associated carbon emissions. We can't leave out transportation optimization, of course, because FMCG companies are optimizing their transportation and logistics operations to reduce fuel consumption and emissions. This includes route optimization, using more efficient transportation methods, etc. Uh, Coming from a company that is a lot into agriculture, I can't leave out sustainable agriculture. So companies like McCain and other FMCG companies involved in agriculture or food production, implementing sustainable farming practices can help reduce emissions from agri activities and also, preserve soil health. And finally, consumer engagement and education. Businesses like us are engaging with consumers to promote sustainable choices and behaviors, and also encouraging them to make eco-conscious decisions and support products with lower carbon footprints. These are some of the decarbonization models and strategies that showcase the commitment of FMCG businesses, including that of McCain's, to combat climate change and also to adopt more sustainable practices throughout their operations and supply chains. So I would end my address there. Shimoy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Aranya. And I think you gave us a very holistic overview and touched upon each and every aspect within the fence and outside the fence of how FMCG companies like ours are really comprehending this entire decarbonization journey. And the best part is that each element that you mentioned can lead to some amount of emission savings within your value chain spectrum. So I think that's what we really need to target over here. Wonderful. I would now want to invite Shurajit. Shurajit is the head of ESG at ESG and sustainability at Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages and a very dear friend of mine. Shurajit, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the journey looks like in your organization and give us an understanding of the end-to-end spectrum of this entire net zero journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shrimoi. I'm just, getting my slide right. Just give me a second so that I have the right slide in front of the audience here. Yes, there I go. Can you hear me and can you see the slide in front?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shrimoi, for the introduction. And it's really a pleasure to see you as well. At the very outset, thanks to First View for inviting. What I would like to cover is an overview of the entire planning around net zero. We hear this term over and over again, and the kind of introspection that is required, which is the foundation. And at least I believe that it is in science-based target in planning what you are going to do in 2030, and then how you build this superstructure within your organization in FMCG. And finally, with the headwinds and also a lot of opportunities that are coming towards us, how do you future proof this business as you go forward, and where your business's volumes are going to grow and gradually get delinked, from your emissions. So starting with, I thank Mr. Jayakumar, I think, for pointing out that a very large part of the emissions in FMCG actually sit in what we call scope 3, which is essentially outside the boundary of our factory, right? And my previous speakers, Saranya, thank you for pointing out that it is not just manufacturing, but we have several other limbs to this entire, aspect of, carbon mitigation, how we source our ingredients from especially agricultural products, and of course how we distribute, how we do packaging, how do we of course manufacture, and lastly, how do we sell. Even selling also has quite a bit of footprint. Now the very first step in the foundation is to try to understand what your long range growth plans could be, and what your cost of capital is in terms of reducing the cost of carbon and the cost of capital within the organization. That becomes very important because you're going to put budgets in that. Secondly, the hierarchy of environmental management, and I think most of the speakers pointed this out, is that, first you have to reduce energy to the level that is possible, and then look at renewable energy kind of options, and not the other way around. And together with that, what is the maturity of, the various plants which are there, if I may use that term. In an FMCG you would have a number of different kinds of plants, and they would be in different levels of maturity. It's very important to map that, I feel, with respect to the unit processes where you want to make the difference with respect to energy or renewable energy. Water treatment, compressors, chillers, wastewater treatment. Once you have this big foundation and you know where you are actually going to reach in 2030, the work on the superstructure starts. And that is where best practices come in. How can we have, let us say, a model plant, which can be geared towards a future net zero kind of a design for sustainability, if you like. Then the energy systems, obviously, the speakers, who spoke and made wonderful presentations, solar, wind, offsite, then within the factory on tri-generation, biomass, natural gas, steam turbines, which can act as a PRV and can generate energy, electricity as well as steam, heat pumps, chillers, screw compressors, energy management systems. These are, terminology used quite a bit within the industry, and this is something that one has to look at very seriously in terms of engineering in all greenfield as well as existing plants, and try to see that this gets the maximum mileage. With that also comes the aspect of targets and assurance, because in most of the FMCG companies, you would find a situation where the industry is actually growing, and with that the emissions are also growing. How to curb emissions, and flatten that curve, that becomes a very important, kind of a, sensitivity analysis, if you like. And there, some of the most important tools, I think, we discussed logistic optimization, in sustainable agricultural practices, different kinds of tools would be required to understand how these targets can be assured going forward. The last piece is on future proofing and on site, off site, the various green tariffs. The discoms are also providing some of them. What could be the different offsets? And then between capex and opex models around, group captive, etc. All of this require a lot of financial analysis and long-term kind of projections. Reason being, as you know, policies are changing quite drastically around this, and some of the new age opportunities which are there around batteries, hydrogen, then the green open access, interstate kind of policies which are coming, the VPP and CFD, which we discussed. But above all, one cannot lose sight of the other verticals in the FMCG business, particularly with respect to the packaging, to have a circular economy around that, and to see if, let us say, like in the worlds of the CDM, clean development mechanism, now with new mechanisms in the carbon market that can come, can one look at, hastening the process of circularity in terms of recycled content and so on and so forth. So there would be a lot of headwinds. What we are already seeing, some of them, one is, I think, what Mr. Jayakumar also pointed out with respect to supply chains, and greening the supply chain is a very important aspect. Secondly, having access to local emission factors to be able to better do your modeling. Then the scope and the boundary definitions also are changing as different kinds of targets come up in this area. We also are seeing that the need for IT-based solutions, for example, blockchains, etc., IoTs, in order to be better monitoring and having a better sense of integrity, and that's a lot, brings me to the last point, that is on assurance requirements. The assurance requirements on telling the story consistently and showing emission reductions against the near-term and long-term targets is going to become very, very important. It has already become very important as assurance providers are kind of raising the bar on the kind of requirements. And so with this, in a nutshell, what I wanted to say is that it is a stepping stone to net zero. There's no one size fits all, but one needs to do a lot of introspection and future proofing to be able to get there. Thank you so much. Back to you, Srimohi.
Thank you so much, Rajit. Very interesting and very well articulated. Um, So, moving on, given the amount of time that we have in hand, I think you've heard myself, Shalanya, and Shurajit talk about the opportunities and the unique value proposition, if I can put it that way, of traversing on this net zero journey. But definitely, there are, from a very realistic lens, there are certain challenges, there are certain gaps at the moment. And I would actually like to invite Jay onto the floor to possibly highlight, what are some of the things that your clients have been telling you in terms of challenges, and what is it that you see as coming for this sector in the near future?
Sure. Thank you. So let me put it in this way that all of us on this call obviously have a goal to adopt or maximize the renewable energy adoption. But on practicality, when we go on ground and we want to actually maximize, we are always faced with some kind of a regulatory hurdles. So I thought it would be best to kind of put it up in front of you all so that while you all are actually designing the entire net zero roadmap, you keep in mind this constraints and then plan it accordingly, rather than being blindsided at a later execution phase. So when we talk about on-site, okay, that is where we are going to put up a solar plant within your premise, either on your roof or a ground or a floating pond. The most enabling regulatory kind of provision was net metering, wherein you all can use you can maximize the capacity installed on site. If there is no consumption in real time, the solar plant will generate energy and bank it into the grid. You can utilize this energy in the night time or during holidays. For example, most of the FMCG companies may have one weekly off at least, right? So, however, couple of years back, the maximum cap for net metering used to be 1 megawatt, bearing a couple of states where net metering was not allowed. Most of the country had net metering cap at 1 megawatt. But 2 years back, this cap has now been reduced to 500 kilowatt. So mostly majority of the states in the country have adopted 500 kilowatt being the limit. So therefore, when you are planning on site, either you'll have to take into consideration if your load is not uniform, not 24 by 7, especially during the solar hours, net metering regulation, net metering availability is a very critical aspect for you all to increase the capacity you can install in your premise. Second is, we are seeing that there has been increased number of charges being levied by the discom even on on-site installations. So for example, earlier there used to be no charges, but we have seen now Karnataka adding grid support charges, Tamil Nadu adding some kind of grid charges. Then we have got states like MP, Uttarakhand, where they are charging open access charges like cross subsidy surcharge, additional surcharge, if the consumers are adopting OPEX solutions for on site solar power plant. Also, we have seen a new charge called as banking charge being introduced in Gujarat. So earlier, when the entire saving between the solar tariff given by a developer like Fourth Partner, was available, the saving between the grid tariff and the solar power tariff. Now, some of this savings is being taken away through these charges by the local regulator. Okay. If you want to adopt open access, earlier this limit was 1 megawatt, but with new regulations called as green energy open access, this 1 megawatt has been brought down to 100 kilowatts. So this is a positive thing for the sector. However, there are only 2 or 3 states, in fact, as on date, who have adopted or come up with the regulations around adoption of green energy open access, but still the discoms are lagging to release detailed procedures and policy on how this green energy open access can be availed by a customer of say 100 kilowatt contract demand. Increasingly we are seeing, like, we are in 7 states we have put up a lot of solar open access plant, wind plants, but the transmission constraints are not allowing us to supply 100% renewable energy power being generated. We are being forced to curtail our generation in certain months. So for example, in monsoon we have been asked to curtail our wind generation. In summer, in states where there is good generation during summertime, we have been asked to curtail solar generation. So this is also an impact which customers or the FMCG industry should keep in mind when they are planning their net zero roadmap. So basically, when you all are committing to your stakeholders that you will achieve net zero by 2030, 2040, whatever may be your deadline, there could be some gaps. Okay, and hence we have to always keep innovating and coming up with new products to overcome this gap also. Uh, the next would be, obviously, as we saw some of the panelists here explained us, there is a green power tariff available with discoms now. However, these green power tariffs are actually coming at nearly 10% premium to the normal carbon laden, I would say, a normal coal power being supplied by the discom, which is very contrary to what we see, because the solar power is the cheapest source of power, wind would be the next cheapest source, and then the coal power. But however, the discoms are charging us 10% premium for availing 100% green power from them. We can also opt for virtual power plant, which actually delinks the open access plant. It can be in a resource free, like a resource rich state like Rajasthan for solar, and say Tamil Nadu or Karnataka for wind. An FMCG company can be in, say, for example, Odisha, where there is not great open access regulations, or AP or Telangana, or for that matter in Haryana, where open access is not being permitted. You all can still get the benefit of green energy at least. If not, the power will not flow to you, but the green component can be yours if you all sign for virtual power plant agreements. However, in India, still there is lack of clarity on who is going to be the regulator for VPPs. Okay, there, although the Supreme Court has settled the matter, but still none of the contracts have gone through. So these are practical, challenges which you will face when you all will go for adoption of renewable energy. Therefore, it's important, one is to be aware of these challenges so that you all plan your roadmap accordingly, and then partner with the right company who has seen all of these, overcome these challenges, and are able to help you out with the solution. This is what I would like to end, Shimoy. Up to you.
Thank you so much. I think very well put, and I was putting my video off, but nodding to throughout your presentation because you touched upon some of the daily issues that we discuss even within our own business, and if we are able to identify the right problems, I think we'll be able to find the right solutions as well. So thank you so much for highlighting what are some of those shortcomings right now. and also what could be some of the probable solutions. We'll continue that discussion further, and I'll invite Vikrant from Tata Power, who's already spoken earlier about some of the smart solutions. But Vikrant, if you can throw a little bit of light specifically for the FMCG sector and talk about what could be some of the solutions that can be adopted by companies.
See, while every organization, right, is planning to achieve the carbon neutrality or no carbon net zero. See, typically there are no three words that we generally use, right? Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emission, right? I have seen these words become essential almost for all corporates, right? But particularly, I would like to show certain highlights on this type of emissions. Now, Scope 1 emissions are direct emissions, no, from sources that owned or controlled by an organization, an individual company, right? These emissions occurs from active such as activities such as burning fossil fuels, on-site generation, etc., right? On-site power generation from non-renewable energy sources, and industrial processes such as chemical reactions and production processes. Whereas Scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions associated with the generation of purchase of electricity, steam, heat, cooling consumption of the companies in their organization. This Scope 2 type of emission, these emissions occurs at the factory level where energy is generated, not at the company's own facility. Whereas the Scope 3 emissions are all indirect emissions, right, that occurs within the value chain of the company, of an organization, includes both upstream and downstream activities, right? These emissions typically are beyond companies' direct control, direct ownership, and the consequences of these activities, right? Scope 3 emissions activities can no emissions can be no can be from purchase of goods, services, business travels, employees communicating, communicating, waste disposal, etc. Out of these three scopes, right, that is main the roadmap for achieving carbon neutrality. Scope 1 and Scope 2 are easier one no to no easier one to mitigate, whereas Scope 3 emissions, if compared with Scope 3 emissions. However, a lot of large company organizations are keen on taking interested on procuring IRECs, right? With additionally by doing virtual PPA, CFD contracts, in order to reduce their not only Scope 2 but Scope 3 emissions. So typically, in order to mitigate in order to achieve the carbon neutrality, apart from on-site solution, as rightly said by my co-panelist, Mr. Uh, uh, Jai Kumar ji, right? Virtual PP is among the one of the important solutions that one needs to be considered in an mind for an FMCG companies.
Thank you so much, Vikrant. Very well put together. Given the amount of time that we have in hand, I'm just going to request Kartikeya to possibly sum up the best practices and also tell us a little bit from your experience at Sunshore. What do you think is really progressing? How are companies? What kind of success metrics are really being used by companies to progress on their net zero journeys? Is it stakeholder capitalism? Is it this favorable regulatory environment that Jay was talking about earlier? What exactly are the best practices, and what is it that companies should now be focusing on as the next set of milestones?
Thank you, Shrimoy, for the opportunity. And see, I think as part of our discussions today, in fact, it's been a learning curve for me over the last 90 minutes. Having your views, Saranya's views, and Churojit sir's views from an inside-out perspective. When we are generally speaking to customers or industries, in whatever space, we are typically having a discussion around input energy, and that to input energy in the form of power, right? But I really understand that, first of all, beyond input power, there are various other sources of energy that industries put to use, that is used not only at the manufacturing point but also throughout the value chain, right, before and after the project product is manufactured. I feel that in my experience, the key success metrics for input power, right, which is the part of the problem where we really come in and add value as a company, is one is what percentage of power you are able to offset. That is, I think, the biggest, and that percentage of power that you can offset depends, as Jay pointed out, on the regulatory environment, the regulatory scenarios within the operating geographies for your facilities. So if just you think broadly, then one must set a goal for a certain offset, and the key constraint there have to be the regulatory environment in which you are operating. One guideline there, which I believe companies should use, is just divide your operating regions in terms of where intrastate drawal of power is possible and where it is not possible, and focus first on the intrastate places and try to just maximize your offset there, because that truly is the lowest hanging fruit. um, and one should prioritize the speed over here. While I understand that in the manufacturing industry and generally heavy industries, being slow and sure is of great value. But when it comes to the move to renewable energy, I truly believe that industries have many reasons to hurry up. Reason number one, obviously, is that the planet is heating up like no tomorrow. Reason number two also is very infrastructure related. So a lot of substations from which open access power actually flows to industries in most industrialized states such as Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, UP, Gujarat, you will find that there are not too many substations that are actually available now. So, companies who are operating their plants in regions where open access is available in intrastate, I feel that they should put target timelines in place and really chase them down to achieve their goals there. And with that experience, the other problems which are more complex to solve, you should then get onto those. And there also, with VPPAs coming up, with green attributes purchasing, a lot of certifying agencies now operating in the country, I feel that going RE100 and making a 5 to 10 year plan for that is actually not very difficult to achieve, and one must go after that in this fashion. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kartikeya, for rounding that up for us. I would actually request Sakshi to possibly pull out the questions that have come forth while we were all speaking. And while she does that, I think just to put maybe a line or two summing up the entire session, you've heard both sides of the spectrum here. You've heard companies, FMCG companies like Marico, McCann, Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages, talking about their journey. We are at different stages of the roadmap right now, so I think it gave all of you a clear picture of what companies are doing at whichever stage of the spectrum they are in. And I think we were all trying to say that identifying and systematically inventorizing your GHG emissions, whether it is within your operations and more specifically within your value chain. For a company like Marico, for example, 95% of our entire emissions footprint is actually scope 3. So while we have set a target very clearly for a net zero target for our operations, we know that there's still a lot of work which still needs to be done when it comes to our scope 3 emissions. And like Sharanya pointed out, circular economy based principles, logistics optimization, we've been working on certain scope 3 elements to be able to dematerialization of our plastic packaging. I think that's a real problem any FMCG companies would have. We are trying to work on how the emissions can be avoided across our scope 3 categories. So clearly, inventorization of emissions is a very, very important step. And I think we were all talking about that, not just within our operations, but within our value chain. And for the FMCG sector, the value chains are very complex, right? For companies like Marico or Coca-Cola or McCann or any FMCG company for that matter, it's a very complex supply chain with disruptions, obviously business disruptions coming in when we are trying to optimize emissions. So keeping all of that in mind, I think the net zero targets really have to be decided. And like we mentioned earlier, there is a reason to chase the 2030 goals on climate resilience. So the problems have been stated, the demand by consumers is right up there. So how we traverse on that journey is something that we really need to find out. um, Sakshi, if you could tell us what the audience thinks on this matter, we can take up the questions. We are already at 4:30, so maybe another 5 minutes if that's okay for all the panelists. Is that solar power only the source to achieve net zero? Since most of the cases, implementation of solar has lots of conflicts with respect to pre-requirements. Is there a small initiatives to implement for small organizations? Um, Kartike, would you want to take this up?
Sure, absolutely. So, see, I think for net zero energy, solar is the which is most possible throughout the country. Because typically FMCG, in the context of FMCG, the power requirements are anywhere from 5 megawatts to 10 megawatts, and a lot of times that the facilities are even smaller. So solar is that one technology which you can put up a 300 kilowatt plant also, and you can put up a 300 megawatt plant also. So it is a kind of technology which serves all use cases, is abundantly available in the populous part of the country, the northern regions of the country, where you will not find wind very easily. But having said that, if you have a larger requirement, let's say 10 megawatts, 20 megawatts, or you can aggregate maybe even more across the country, then you can go for ISTS solutions, which can give you round the clock renewable energy, which is a mixture of solar and wind. And going forward, maybe even battery storage over the next couple of years. But yes, solar is the most accessible and easy to implement. And other small initiatives, I believe that there are many initiatives, starting from first of all reducing your energy use, which is what both Srimoy and Sharanya pointed out earlier, that once you reduce and then you go out and try and reduce the cost of the incoming power.
Right, absolutely. I'll just add to that, Karthikeya, for Sunil's question. So, if you just look at Marico's net zero targets, we actually have a target of reaching 93% renewable energy for India operations by 2030, and the remaining 7% would come from offsets. And we've started doing carbon forestry across some of our key facilities here in India. So the carbon sequestration is something that we are looking at. So Sunil, to answer your question, there are a lot of initiatives, and when you look at the carbon management, spectrum on the whole, you can start with your reduction strategy and then actually move to maybe buying carbon credits would be your last option. So, how is it that you can avoid emissions by either reducing your overall emissions is something that you really need to take. And of course, I think Kartikeya explained the entire aspects on solar uptake very, very well. Sakshi, can we move to the next question, please? Vikram, this question is from you. Does Tata Power supply its own solar panels only for the projects or open to make other makes also?
Typically, if you see the solution, so we use our own module manufacturer for the solution for our own customer. But typically, if you see, for in last year or so, we have added somewhere around 1 gigawatt worth, 1 gigawatt worth solar PV system. So typically, we do not have that much higher capacity of module manufacturing facility. So yes, we are dependent upon other source of modules as well, other make of modules as well, considering the multiple aspect, whether it is whether the consumer wants ALMM approved, DIS make approved, or probably if the consumer is open for any non-Indian make models also. So depending upon the solution that end consumer wants, we are we are ready to use any other alternate make of module, provided it meets the quality standard which has been prescribed by our own organization.
Thank you so much, Vikrant. Can we move to the next question from Mariko? Which of the 15 categories account for the most of scope 3 emissions, and how much do you plan to cut them down? Digvijay, this discussion will need us to sit over coffee, but to give you an understanding, I think category 1 for any FMCG company is always the highest contributor of scope 3 emissions, which is procurement of goods, right? And what we've done at Marico is we've started reporting, actually not just reporting, but externally verifying, assuring our scope 3 emissions for the last 4 years now. When we look at our category 1, we actually break it down into raw materials and packaging materials. And then we try to find out for each type of material what is the kind of emissions that it is incurring. And by certain opportunity levers, like we would like to call them, how can we reduce emissions across the entire material procurement? I'll give you an example. I talked about plastics earlier. I think that's a real problem for any FMCG company. And we've actually estimated what is the overall emissions trend for our plastic packaging, different types of plastic packaging. And whatever work we are doing towards making our packaging recyclable, it's actually leading us to account for how much emissions we are avoiding because of that. So whether it is, alternate material substitution, looking at biodegradable materials, looking at dematerialization, at every stage we are actually finding out how the scope 3 emissions are reducing because of the type of material. And that attributes to a significant decrease. In fact, we have a 12% reduction in our scope 3 GHG emission intensity for the last 4 years. And that is only through proper accounting. I hope that answers your question. If not, I invite you to our office for a cup of coffee. The next one is, I've come across various discussions on different topics, but one that I haven't encountered much is on carbon capture and storage. I'm interested in learning about status of carbon capture and storage. Have anyone already started using this technology? Not exactly here at Marico, but maybe let me ask Shurajit. Shurajit, is this something that you've implemented at Coca-Cola already?
Not really, except that in some plants across the globe, from what I know, they would capture CO2 for utilization, within the drinks beverages business. But I wouldn't really call it a CCUS kind of a facility, which is essentially to put it inside salt pans and in saline aquifers and things like that. To know more about this, there have been a number of applications globally, particularly in the US, and where it is being taken very seriously. And it is usually the iron and steel sector which is actually doing this. In India, Tata Steel is doing it in Jamshedpur.
Yeah, perfect. I echo what Shurajit just mentioned. Like I said, I think in the FMCG sector, the adoption of CCUS is still quite new and quite nascent, but there are certain initiatives that are being taken, at least on the sequestration bit. Like I mentioned, we've been working towards carbon forestry in some premises. There are other companies which are working on the sequestration and using it as an offset, as a carbon offset for their emissions. There are a lot of global examples, so maybe someone at first view could share what are some of the examples from India which are working more on CCUS. I hope that answers your question. We're already 5 minutes past due time. Maybe we can take one more question, Sakshi. Combining heating and cooling requirements presents a good opportunity to reduce emissions. How seriously is this being looked at by the FMCG sector? Jay, is this something that you would like to speak about?
So honestly, I'm not aware of this because it's more to do with the processes being followed in the FMCG manufacturing. sorry, I wouldn't be able to contribute much on this.
Yeah,
Could
this.
I?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Shumai. So I think the intent of the question is, heat pumps, essentially using, low heat sources and trying to see if those could be captured together and utilized. And heat pumps is something that we are looking at pretty seriously. But honestly speaking, whether they will replace the boiler or things like that, we don't know yet. But we are looking very seriously at heat pumps because, as you would imagine, in a FMCG industry, you would have a number of sources of heating and cooling, and those are, apart from heat exchangers, of course, heat exchangers are used very widely in FMCG. But apart from that, heat pumps are being used to capture low-grade heat and to be able to transfer. So that is still in the works, but it's happening.
Thank you so much, Rajit. I believe these are all the questions for now. This is a topic that we can all go on for cups of coffee, maybe if not one. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the eminent panelists. I think we've managed to touch upon all the aspects of the net zero journey for FMCG. And for the audience with whom we could not speak, if there are further questions, maybe the host could direct them to us as and when required. But thank you so much once again. Let's remain climate forward. Back to you, Sakshi.
Thank you so much, Shimoy, for wonderfully comparing the session. Over to you, Sakshi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. A big shout out to all our attendees for extending their valuable time and support for the event. And a special thanks to, of course, we have come to the end of our virtual event. A very, very special thanks to Miss Ree, superbly managing the session. You were really impressive. And we would like to thank our partners, Tata Power, Sunshine Energy, and Fourth Partner Energy for the immense support to help organize this event. We promise to give more exciting sessions, and the floor is now open for networking. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure to have you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you, Srimuri.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sakshi.
Take care.
Thank you,
Truly
everyone.
wonderful.
Bye bye.